The champagne flute quivered slightly between my fingers, not from anxiety, but from restraint. My eyes were fixed on him as he lifted his glass in a toast to the newlyweds. My daughter stood radiant, dressed in white, joy sparkling in her eyes. He smiled beside her, the father-in-law, a man who confused power with presence, draping it around himself like a wrinkled, second-hand suit. Then, without the slightest hint of warning, he turned toward me. What he said next is carved permanently into memory. "Amazing how far charity cases have climbed these days," he announced, his voice loud enough to turn heads, amusement twitching at the corner of his lips. "No husband, no real job, and yet here you are, sitting among the rest of us." A hush fell over the table, stiff silence broken only by a few uneasy chuckles. His wife looked away. My daughter froze mid-smile. I rose slowly, my movements calm, my tone steady. "Do you even know who I am?" His eyes flickered. He faltered. That's when the illusion began to unravel. I raised my daughter on my own. From the moment her father traded us for a younger version of himself, leaving me behind with a child, a mortgage, and a smirking attorney in my inbox, softness ceased to be an option. I built emotional fortresses. I learned the language of finance. I mastered silence. Some evenings, all we had for dinner were peanut butter sandwiches. But she never knew how close I was to falling apart. All she saw was comfort. I smiled through breathless nights. I juggled 2 jobs, then 3. I built a future out of desperation, defiance, and deep, unshakable love. And then she met him. The boy. He was respectful, well-mannered, the kind any mother would hope her daughter brings home. But no boy comes without a family. And behind his family stood a man. Douglas Keating, CEO. Born into legacy. An empire in loafers. He sized people up the way a doctor examines a malignancy. When we first met, he smiled, just not with his eyes. The red flags were subtle at first. A venue suggestion here. A wedding planner he handpicked. A seating arrangement that conveniently positioned me far from the heart of the celebration. I initially chalked it up to oversight. But men like Douglas don't make mistakes. They make moves. He painted the picture he wanted everyone to see. He was the benefactor, the host, the guiding hand. I was the guest who just happened to show up and enjoy the spread. I stayed quiet. I watched. I nodded at the right moments and smiled on cue. But I waited. Because everything I had built, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, was not going to be handed over to a man cloaked in designer arrogance. The turning point came 3 months before the wedding. Buried inside a stack of vendor paperwork I supposedly didn't need to worry about, I found it, a legal document labeled as a gift agreement. But I understand contracts. I breathe numbers. I live in details. And this gift, it wasn't meant for the couple. It was a financial tether, a backdoor into my daughter's business. The same startup I had helped her create. I was the first investor. I was the unpaid assistant, the emotional support, the strategist burning the midnight oil. And he had tried to hijack it behind our backs. That's when the heartache gave way to resolve. And the planning began. It started with a paper trail, scanned documents, saved emails, recorded conversations. Each piece, carefully gathered. I cashed in quiet debts, unspoken ones. People who remembered favors. People in positions of influence who had even less patience for men like Douglas than I did. Then, without a ripple, I moved the assets. My shares in my daughter's company were shifted discreetly into a trust, an arrangement that would become hers to control the moment she signed her marriage license. A symbolic gift. I didn't tell her. Not yet. Because this wasn't about money. Not really. The real battleground was his image. And Douglas's reputation was a mansion of mirrors built on shaky ground. I knew that when he stood up at that wedding, trying to diminish me in front of my daughter, her new husband, and 200 watching eyes. He was striking the final match. "Do you have any idea who I am?" I asked him, my voice calm, but laced with steel. He didn't answer, but I saw the shift in his gaze. He glanced, to his wife, to the lawyer positioned discreetly near the back, and to the man in the gray suit stationed by the catering staff. That man. He was mine. An agent from the SACE. And yes, I had added him to the guest list personally. "You believed this was your event," I said, just loud enough for the microphone to pick it up. "You thought you were pulling the strings." I stepped in, closing the distance between us. "I let you believe that." A murmur rippled through the room. Then I reached into my clutch and retrieved the envelope, thick, weighty. Inside was everything. Documentation proving his attempt to seize control of a business that didn't belong to him. Fraud, manipulation, underhanded tactics, it was all there. Even the recorded transfer. He'd been sloppy on that call, and I had the tab. A soft gasp escaped from somewhere nearby. Douglas went pale. "But I'm not here to ruin your son's wedding," I said, steady as ever. "Here's what happens now. You remove yourself from my daughter's world. Quietly. No drama. No strings. Or I take this public first thing tomorrow." His mouth opened, then shut. His wife was already in tears. My daughter stared at me, stunned but not afraid. Amazed. He left before dessert. No farewell. No second toast. By Monday, his board was convening emergency sessions. My contact at SACE submitted the formal notice. No headlines, just a gentle but firm push, enough to send a man like Douglas sliding into the shadows. And my daughter. She discovered the letter in her suite that night, the trust documentation, waiting on her pillow. She called me, her voice trembling through tears. "You protected me again," she whispered. I said nothing. She understood. Vengeance doesn't need fireworks. It doesn't demand spectacle. It requires patience, precision, and the wisdom to let people misjudge you. So when someone asks what I do for a living, I just smile and say, I build empires and bury the men who try to steal them. Justice isn't noisy. It's clinical. And now it's complete.